Hello again. I'm watering. I am Fikiri, the Dark Feminina, here in Leicester, the Rohan, on Thursday, the 23rd of November 2023. Ada, Heidi. Um, Leicester, of course, is where part of the Wars of the Roses took place, at least once, and tragically is where His Majesty King Richard III was slain. Um, the interesting thing about the generations of the Wars of the Roses of our parents is that they're father to son and mother to daughter. Little explored in recent histories, but His Majesty King Henry VI, his said son, is actually Edward IV, His Majesty King Edward IV, whose said son is Richard III, brought up in the same household but not truly brothers. They're father to said son. And His Majesty King Richard III's said son is Henry VII, is His Majesty King Henry VII. And Margaret of Anjou, her own mama is Queen Joanna II of Naples, and Queen Joanna II of Naples is the Cleopatra, and Margaret of Anjou, Queen, is Cleopatra, who inherited the title after her, and her daughter, who inherited the title after her, is Lady Queen Elizabeth Woodville Tudor. And her daughter, who inherited the title after her, is Queen Joanna of Castile, the one they call the Mad. I'm in good company. And her daughter, who inherited the title of the Cleopatra after her, is Lucrezia Borgia, who is actually UE and the daughter of the said Kore of Kialo Sudan. She's Umaru by birth and adopted. I'm not the only one in history. By the Borgia family, of Chialo E, Italy. And Lucrezia Borgia's own daughter, who inherited the title of the Cleopatra after her, is Lady Queen Anne Boleyn. Lady Queen Anne Boleyn Kent. She's WK. We all know that she was fought very heavily for being the Cleopatra. And her daughter, of course, we know, is who inherited the title of the Cleopatra after her, is Princess Queen Elizabeth Tudor, Elizabeth I. And the interesting thing about Queen Elizabeth Tudor is that her daughter, she remained virgin, but we all have the possibility of bearing children that the Creator does. Took from Queen Elizabeth Tudor and to one of her Pro Forma husbands in Kialo in Africa, and he's the MU Duke of Ndola, but he is the Duke there, and they're performed, and so the Queen didn't need to meet him, didn't even need to meet him in Ivrin, even in Ivrin. God did it. That's why they say God creates babies, because you never know where some of yours are going to be born. So Queen Elizabeth Tudor's inheriting daughter of the Cleopatra is Queen Nzinga. And Queen Nzinga, her inheriting daughter is Queen Yanseba, who is actually the daughter of the king at the time of Kialo Tutsi, Egypt, Mizraim. And her inheriting daughter, she is Cleopatra III. The counting began again after what happened to Lady Queen Elizabeth Boleyn Tudor. So Elizabeth is the Cleopatra I, and her daughter Queen Nzinga is the Cleopatra II. Queen Yanseba, who was squared Kialo Ku, Tanzania, to the Nyakusa king, the Ruu, became the Cleopatra III. And her inheriting daughter, all the way back to Europe, is the Lady Queen, because Cleopatra Madame de Montespan. And her inheriting daughter is Cleopatra V, is the real lady who is more Flanders. I could go on, but that gives a flavour of people used to write about this and want to remember and know and remember who the Cleopatras were, the same as they wanted to know who the kings were. But there you go. The family ties of the generations of the Wars of the Roses matter everything. It's sometimes the bitterness is more in the telling on and off than in the realities when they remembered who they were to each other. In all that fighting, sometimes the mind can, you know what stress is like, sometimes the mind, and you have to be brought back to, oh yes, that person is actually my daughter or my mother or my son or my father. And so, although it seems like they just hated each other, emotionally, much more complicated than that. The fight was over interpretations of prophecy. There were portents of doom in the reign of King Henry the Sixth, and even in the reign of his father, King Henry the Fifth. And so, how people interpreted that, what they thought was a good idea to do about what the Long was threatened with, what these islands were threatened with. Coupled with some people's personal ambition, not always the king's. That's why when they call it the Cousins' War, some of the relatives had more to say than you may think. Richard Lord Warwick and Lady Queen Elizabeth Woodville are actually pro forma. Papa didn't take to the idea that the Queen, once she became Queen, could not see him. I know it may sound not honourable, but the modern world's got very strange about relationships because people who are pro forma are already married to each other. But that doesn't mean that the husband, the square though husband, agrees of all a lady's potential relationships, and that was kind of behind why he didn't altogether remain. He wasn't a complete enemy to her either. They all appreciated each other because all related to each other. We're not father to son and mother to daughter and cousins and sisters. It's very tragic the way it all happened. So even though from the play, the television drama, The White Queen, it looks as if Lady Queen Elizabeth Woodville just did not appreciate King Richard III. This is actually not so. On and off moments and all that fighting and the fears as to what could happen if people around him didn't remain honourable, is the truth, rather than thinking that His Majesty himself, King Richard III, was a terrible person who had no right to the throne. After all, he'd inherited. They all knew who they were to each other. So there you go. Here's a little of Leicester where I am. There's some workmen busy here on the cathedral, which is due to reopen on the 26th, as I've just been reminded from the sign, the other side of the cathedral. So here I am from the Rohan, Leicester today. Amen. God bless.